and welcome to the ninth episode of the Frontend Coffee Break, a podcast where we take a break from our everyday lives, grab a cup of joe or something that you'd enjoy drinking, and talk about different frontend topics. As always, I have my colleague, Ricard. How are you today?
I am very good, Chucho. Thank you so much.
And today's topic, it's an interesting one. Let's go directly to it. But before we start discussing it a little bit, we're going to talk about interviews, and it's been changing the way that we do interviews. So let's begin with our own experience on the interviews that we did, not for Cognizant Netcentric, but for previous companies. Maybe even the first few interviews you ever did for a IT front end development or just development job. Ricardo, would you like to begin, or should I tell you
I
my
can go. I
little
can
stories?
go.
Okay, go ahead, take it
So
away.
the first interview I did as a candidate, right? For my first job, it was already a technical job, development job. Lucky me. Um, yeah, it was not as hard as future interviews. Like it was very friendly. I mean, I met directly with the CEO of the company because it was a small company here in Barcelona, right? And we talked about what I had studied, what technologies I did touch, right? And it was super friendly. I Sure there was pressure, of course, because it was my first time. I dressed nicely with my shirt and whatever, but but I remember other harder interviews. I think the more I progressed through my career, the harder the interviews got because, of course, you aim for senior positions, right? But the first one, I think the expectations were low on both ends, and it was friendly. How about you?
Well, it's my some of my first interviews. I don't remember all of them. I just remember when I was out of college, I started doing interviews in different places. You know, they say, okay, so we have a list of potential companies that you can work in. I was living back then in Monterrey, Mexico, which is a big industrial city. So there were a lot of technological companies there. I mean, they were way away from the city center where I lived, but I mean, they were there, and I went to do an interview. One of the ones that I recall most is I went to do the interview for this company, and I just sort of liked the idea of what the job description was, because it was not only developing but also going out and trying to sell the product. It was like being an evangelist or advocate about the product. And I remember that, yeah, they ask you very basic questions, in the sense that things that you should know once you're out of college, like what is a database, how would you design this, and things like that. But one of the questions that stuck to me the most was that they say, hey, by the way, why aren't you wearing a tie? And then you look at them and you look at the interviewers, both of them IT guys. They had the tie and they had the jacket, the Americana, the like their suit on, full suit on. And I was surprised. I was just looking at them, and then you would see the entire office, and everyone was wearing a tie. And honestly, I had looked for a tie. I had looked because I dressed up somewhat nicely. I was looking for a tie. I didn't have it. I didn't find my tie. I think that at that moment, I don't know why I didn't find the tie. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to be honest about it. It's like, well, I didn't find the tie, but I do not believe in working with a tie. And they were both looking at me like,
Hmm.
please explain. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing that stuck with me. And I told them, well, it's like, I understand if you're going to make me go to the client that I will have to use a tie. Perfectly. I mean, it's part of it's part of the things that I need, the how I need to be. But if I'm going to work in IT and I'm going to be behind a desk and nobody's going to see me, I don't see any reason to wear a tie. And they say, okay, fine. But if you're going to get hired here, it means a good answer, but know that you need to wear a
Yeah,
tie.
yeah. I mean, also here, I think in Barcelona, there was not so much currently, but I think years ago there was this culture of suit and tie, even like for quote unquote consultants who, even like you were saying, just work at the office. They have no client contact, no client facing contact. But maybe those offices they greet customers that come in or clients that come in, and they wanted to have some sort of impression. Like if you have a tie and suit, you will code better or faster. Probably not. And it's something that you have to consider as a candidate, because if you have to have suit, multiple ties, multiple jackets, probably multiple shirts, right? These are all adds to the cost of actually the living, because maybe, I mean,
Yeah.
you have to dry clean them, right? And weekly you will have an added cost that you have to account for when you negotiate your salary.
Well, and I think that the funny thing is that this is, I think, something that is inherited from countries that are colder than, for example, Spain and Mexico. In Mexico, in Monterrey, it's like freaking hot, and in summer, it's horribly hot. I mean, like really. And I just the idea of having to wear a suit on summer was like, why, why?
Well,
Even if the office is
crank the
fresh.
AC up to 10 degrees, and then you have to wear your suit, and you're feeling
Oh,
excellent.
no, no, no. But I think that's the reason that we were ties. Well, that's I guess that one of my first interviews experience. But interviews have come a long way since then. Now we're doing interviews online. Most of the interviews, all of the interviews, I think that we've done in the last couple of years are online. Although we have done interviews before that online when we were interviewing for other offices and they didn't have enough people. And but what do you think about that? What do you think about the new remote interviews or in general about them?
Remote interviews. So I'm sure that some listeners will like them, some listeners will hate them. Me, as an interviewer, I don't love them. I mean, I pretty much prefer face to face exchange. As a candidate, I see the appeal of doing remote interviews. It's faster, it's easier.
More
But yeah, but
convenient, definitely.
more convenient, right? I mean, you don't have to actually go to that location, to the office, and dress nicely. I mean, sure, you will dress nicely,
Well, at
waist
least from
up,
the waist
right?
up.
Waist up. But it's a more convenient. You just finish work at whatever time. You just do a phone call and you're done, right? And having to go to an actual office, commute there, and unless you're gonna like you want to know what the office life is in that company, it's not convenient. But yeah, how about you as an interviewer? How do you see it?
Well, I mean, as you say, I agree that it's more convenient, and there's some people, especially introverts, for example, or more that will be happier to do an interview this way. But you do miss the opportunity of getting to know how the office is, even if you haven't. Well, if you have a hybrid contract, which is something that we can currently find more and more. Because I like going to the office from time to time. I like to have the option of going to the office. Um, I think it's good. It's a very convenient, as you say. But for example, there's we had a candidate once that couldn't, or it was very risky for them to go out of their house and do an interview in person. They had a something that didn't allow them to do this kind of things, and so it's really really convenient, and it's a great candidate, and it's nice that we managed to hire them. Um, but sometimes it's not possible to go physically to the company, and this is a very good option, I guess.
I mean, which is a nice point, right? If your contract or the offer is going to be a remote only offer, it makes zero sense for you to have to travel to the office and do that one. I mean, because you want to know how the candidate or the person would react on a remote environment, on phone calls. Are they having a good setup, bad setup, all those things.
Hmm.
But as an interviewer, it's easier to handshake and sit there and no distractions, because when I'm on the computer, it's impossible not to get distracted a little bit, and I need to do double the effort to be focused, and yeah, technical problems and all those things.
I'm well, yeah. Oof. I remember. I mean, we've had so many interviews in which I don't know if 15 minutes, 20 minutes have been just wasted away because we couldn't connect. The typical. Can you hear me? Is this working? Oh, wait, wait, wait. No, we cannot hear you. And then you have to turn off the camera for a bit. Let's see if it gets better. Although usually I like to have the interview with a camera on. Maybe if we've been advancing a lot in the interview and I've had a pretty good idea of how the candidate is, I might say, okay, and we're having issues, turn off the camera because it's fine. Well, we'll discuss a little bit about this a bit later. But yeah, it's there's so many problems, technical problems that can happen on an online interview that cannot happen when the person is there in person. I miss the small talk. I miss the connection. I miss looking at the person, and because you get a lot of information about the demeanor and the way that they are. Because you're not only hiring someone for their knowledge, but also, for example, for their cultural fit, and I remember that one of the things or one of the questions that I ask myself always before saying yes, I recommend this candidate or not is, would I be willing to work with this candidate or not? And this is something that it's not impossible, of course, being doing this online, but it's something that when you're one on one physically, you do get a better feeling
It's easier,
about
yeah.
that.
Hmm.
Yeah, but I guess it's because we're used to meeting people and making our decision of how what kind of person that is physically, not online. I mean, I guess for new generations, maybe it's enough to they get a good idea of how the person is just online. I don't know about that, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, it's a technical problems that really scales my balance, and then really like makes me like in person, because I mean, having to repeat yourself over on because they don't hear it, or they have bad connection, or it's like, or they're using headphones, or the camera is blurry, or all those things. It's like, oh my god. I mean, and then it's a chore for me to actually do this job, and you end up not in it. I mean, you're human, right? And you end up not having a good impression of the candidate, even though they had maybe the knowledge or the best intentions. But if the setup is
yes.
not correct, or they do it on the car we've seen, or on the street, or on a bar, it's like, dude, if you're gonna have an interview, do a proper setup, test your connection, test all those things, so it goes smoothly.
Have you had an interview with someone at a bar that they were at a bar or at a
Well,
car?
or a cafe or something, right? I mean, or in a co-working space where there's no noise in the background, and then it's hard for you to ask the questions because they don't hear you, and also you to hear what they're saying because there's background noise. Sure, Google Meet does
True.
magic with noise cancellation, noise whatever, but still, I mean, if you don't have a setup at home that allows you to be in a silent for, I don't know, an hour that the interview goes, it's hard. It's hard.
And how about the that you mentioned a bit about the questions and such, and um, what things? Well, do you think that the questions that we ask or the way that we handle the interviews has changed, or for you has it changed since we've gone fully remote?
Yeah, I think you will agree with me that a little bit it has to change, right? Because when you are in person, it allows you to do different things. Like I remember you and I, we were in the office, and we used to use a blackboard or a whiteboard a lot to ask the candidates about doing a layout or something in CSS. How do you approach this sort of, I don't know, 3-column layout or whatever? And then we would draw on the whiteboard, and then it would be very, very, like, I don't know, practical, and a good sense of how people solve these things. And now online it's a bit different. What tricks do you use when you do online interviews? What do you want, a whiteboard, or you want to share stuff? How do you do
Well,
it?
for example, I've been um, accumulating exercises because before, as you say, when you have the candidate there, it's very nice to say, hey, how would you solve this? You're not looking for a specific code, you're just trying to get an idea of how the mind of the candidate works, and they
Hmm.
go up to the board and they start writing and start analyzing it. It's very nice to see how they approach
Yeah.
that problem. But now that it's online, what I've been doing is that I've been trying to gather. I mean, you have certain advantages that, well, you could always have it on site anyhow, but I'm trying to gather questions that I can show. Like, I'm going to share my screen, I'm going to show a little bit of code. Could you please tell me blah 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 about this? What would you improve? What would you change? Okay, so I'm going to show you this, I'm going to show you that. I like the idea that it can be more interactive in that sense, that well, that I can share some resources, ask questions based on that, ask them to do a little bit maybe of programming, which I usually don't like because I don't. I think it takes too much time, and I appreciate other things from the candidate, each candidate. But that's what I do. I have a set of resources that I know that I can screen share, copy paste, or do these kind of things, and to ask the questions or just get to know the candidate better. I don't know if you have any tool that you like to use
No,
in
no, what you're
particular.
saying is very, I agree totally. Like sharing your screen and showing out, because that's what you're gonna do eventually. Like when you're working on a day to day, you will share your screen with your remote colleague. You're gonna share your screen, and you want to share a piece of code, and that's what it's a very real thing, right? And remember, you and I at the office when we're doing interviews, we would just project our screen into the big
Hmm.
television or something to
Yes.
maybe show something. But yes, I agree with you that sharing code or sharing a layout or something via screen, it works. Yeah, I like
There's
it.
two things that I do like. Well, one thing that I do miss, and the other thing that I do like about remote interviews. The one thing that I miss is that I've seen candidates behave in a very peculiar way, which I appreciate. One of the candidates that we had once, he came with a, with his pens and
Papers.
a paper and pen, yeah,
Paper. Mhm.
and took everything out, put it on the layout, laid on the table, and then when we were conducting the interview, at one point we asked something, and instead of standing up and doing it on the board, he did it on paper, and it was great. It was very nice to see again the way that they were working, thinking. You get to know the
But
candidate
you
a little
cannot
bit
do that
better.
right now because if you see a
No,
candidate typing, you would assume that they're
yeah.
cheating, right? They're
Oh
looking the answers
yes,
on Stack Overflow or MDN documentation. So
and
that's a no-no.
and that's a big no-no, and this is, I guess, a big topic because and that's the other thing that I do like, in the sense that I remember that when we were conducting the interview live, we both have most usually both of the of the interviewers had their laptop out,
Mhm.
and were typing in, notes, taking notes and everything, and from time to time just sending messages to each other. But I always felt that, for example, like, okay, it's I think we have enough information, let's close the interview, or things like this. And but I always felt a little bit like, you could tell that we were communicating, and that would make the candidate feel a bit uneasy. But this is something that you can actually do on remote interviews right now. I mean, the communication between the interviews, I think it's a little bit more fluid, or it doesn't feel like they're not paying attention to the candidate, which I think it's very important to show them that you're actually paying attention all the time. And as you say, one of the things that you can see on the interviews is cheating. Let's talk a little bit about our experience seeing or interviewing candidates that be cheating. I mean, what story comes
It's
to mind?
yeah. I mean, you never know for sure because it's impossible to know for sure, right? But when you can see that the candidate is moving the eyes horizontally, like instead of looking at the screen at your face, it's like moving like this. It's like you're probably reading. Or when you don't see your hands, and as, again your heads are moving or eyes are moving, it's like this guy is typing, even though like on a silent keyboard. I don't know. So it's no good. It's not good to cheat. You can tell something is wrong, but you don't know for sure. So
Yes,
it creates a bad
yes,
feeling in the interview. So
and that's the thing. In the end, you could never know for sure. And I want to believe in the honesty of the candidates. I think it's an important feature, especially if we are entrusting the people to work from home and do their work. And one of the things that you want is honesty, that you know that whatever work that they need to do, they're going to be doing it, because nobody's going to be watching them. We don't have a policy that we're constantly monitoring what the people are doing. I mean, they could just be sitting watching Netflix for all we know, but because we're not um, uh,
mhm.
surveilling them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's important for us to actually trust the persons that we're interviewing, that they can be trusted. I've seen experience like you say, that they're sort of moving the eye when you ask them. They're usually just looking at you, and when you ask the question, is like, so blah blah blah, well blah 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 blah, and you can see not the head maybe, but the eyes moving like horizontally. I've also seen people doing things like this, like you're talking da da da, asking the question, and when the answer is like, well, blah 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 blah, and they go back to you.
So
I
like
mean,
a second screen, second monitor with some sort of definitions or something. And the thing is that we don't usually ask for definitions. We don't usually ask, okay,
no.
define me what an array is, or define me what a boolean is. We don't do that because that's too easy to just Google. And if you don't know, just Google it, and that's it. There's no point of us hiring you because you know how to define a boolean. We want you to think, and usually it's more complex stuff. Okay, how would you pull this information here and then present it to the user, and then where would you improve the performance in this bit? So it's something you cannot Google at that same moment. So I don't get it, man. Wanting to cheat on an interview, it's too risky.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've seen people that their hands, when you ask the question, their hands move. They clearly move, and when they stop answering, they move back, and it's like, yeah, well, blah 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 blah. They just and as you say, you can never know for sure, and we're not going to ask them to put a mirror behind them so that we can see their screen or these kind of things. I mean, we're not going to do that, but it doesn't look good. Even if you're not doing this on purpose, maybe you're, I don't know. I cannot really imagine what you're doing with your hands like that. But it's very important for you to give a good impression in that sense and try not to cheat. And as you say, I think that maybe when we said that have the questions changed, I think that they do have changed a bit, but more on this direction that we say, but naturally that instead of saying, okay, so what's the scenario, what's the variable, what, how would you do this kind of things, that we might ask a little bit about this. Maybe the questions have evolved a little bit more in the direction of how would you improve the performance of, how would you do this, what would you recommend this, how would you solve this issue, just to see how much how capable of answering these kind of questions they are. And it's always, at least that is something that we try to do, that it's always questions regarding things you would need to know to do the job. I would never ask, I don't know, like how would you calculate a logarithm, it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
well,
yeah.
you Google
Classic
that, and that's the way. Yeah, that's the
Google
way that
interview
you do it.
questions about algorithms and math that you will never use. Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Mm.
yes. But well,
So we said a lot of things about not to do, like cheating and stuff. We spent so much time. Tell me, Chucho, things that you would like to see on a candidate when you not more about what you look for in terms of knowledge, but what things you would do as a candidate in an interview, right?
well, besides, no, I'm thinking about the options of interviews that I've liked a lot. I mean, I've had interviews when the technical knowledge is so good that
Mhm.
it's also very satisfying. When you start going on a little bit on the technical side and they just answer without a thought, it's like, oh, I would do this, I would do that. That's nice. But I've also seen people that are honest about not knowing something, and this is something that I that
It's
I
good.
that
Yeah.
I when I see it, that I think it's good. When you
Hmm.
ask, what is this, and they just sort of look like, I don't know, and they say, I don't know, honestly. But then you can see, but based on what you're asking, I think that it seems to be something like this, and they start answering what they think that what you might be asking about, although they don't know the subject that well.
As
And
long as as long as they're not stretching it and trying to come up with
yes,
an
yes,
answer,
no,
going
no, no,
around
no.
and around. It said, no, I don't know, but I think it goes in that direction.
Yeah,
Period. Done. Right.
that's the thing, that for example, if you ask for something very concrete and they say, I don't know, but based on the context, I think that it might go in this direction, they just give you a general idea, and they don't stretch it like in the exams, when you used to, when you were a kid, and try
Yeah.
to write as much as
Yeah.
possible. No, no, no. We had this one candidate that they were very specialized on a framework,
Mhm.
and they started working on the framework from the very beginning. And when they got to us, they were like experts on that framework, or really good at that. But when we were starting asking questions about vanilla JavaScript, CSS, HTML, they didn't exactly know this kind of things. And you could see that the person was on more of a junior level, and that was, I mean, based on the experience, that was what it was. But it ended up hurting them a little bit regarding on how we evaluated them, because of then them not knowing all of these
Mhm.
things that we find basic.
Right.
But when you ask the questions like, how would you do this, they were very like introspective and saying, okay, but I think I would do it this way. This is how I do it right now, but I would do it this way. And the answers were so good that
Mm.
we ended up hiring the candidate, and I think it's one of the best candidates we've hired at that level. I'm very
Very
happy with that.
nice.
Mm, mm,
Very
mm, mm,
nice.
mm.
Yeah, yeah,
But
indeed. Then it's not all about knowledge. No, I mean it's also
mm,
like
mm.
we want to know how you more or less think, how you approach a problem. Okay, you don't know about it, but if you had to, where would you go? There's no shame on Googling or Stack Overflow, but at
No,
least you gotta know more or less where to go and yeah, these things. It's good.
okay. Now, since we're all right now, I think that the remote interviews are here to stay. Let's talk
Hmm.
a little bit about the do's and don'ts. Imagine that you're going to, someone says, hey, I'm going to go and do an interview, a remote interview. What should I take care of? No. What should I worry about? What should I do to make sure that the interview goes well? Besides knowledge. I mean, this is not regarding knowledge.
I would say first of all, don't talk too much. Maybe it's counterintuitive, but I really, as an interviewer, I hate when people just talk way too much on an answer. Right? If I'm asking you, okay, have you done this, and how would you approach this? Just answer like strictly to the point. It's okay, not yes or no, but elaborate a little bit, but not try to make yourself show off or look good and spend me 5 minutes on a question that it was just 30 seconds saying yes, I've done this and I did it that way. Perfect. Next question, right? So yeah.
How many interviews had gone longer than they should have because of this?
Maybe not longer, because in the end I cut them off saying, okay, we're done. It doesn't have more time. In the end, it's just what's allowed. But you as an interviewer don't get to ask everything you wanted to, and then you end up with a bad review because you say, okay, that was not enough information. And of course, if this person would work with you, now you have a reflection of how would it be. I mean, if you ask a question during your day-to-day work and it takes you an hour to answer a simple question, it's a no-no.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Another thing I would recommend is the setup where when you're
Okay.
doing. We've already said that don't do it in a cafeteria, don't do it on your car. But I think that there are more things that you need to take care of. First of all, as you said, the best thing is try to find a place where it's quiet. You know that you're not going to be having distractions. There's not going to be external noise and these kind of things. But how about, for example, the physical setup? What would you recommend regarding equipment? Is a good equipment
Like,
necessary?
spend €1,000 on microphone? No, just kidding. We do it because we do a podcast, but you don't have to. I think I would recommend you just headphones, yes or yes. It can be Bluetooth, it could be cable headphones, but you need headphones because preventing echo. Of course, it's very bothers me and bothers everybody that you're talking and you hear yourself again. So just have headphones. That would be an excellent thing,
Yes.
and also some lighting. I think it people that don't think too much, maybe they are like they have their window on their back, and it's like they're like the bad how do you say it, the James Bond bad Doctor No, and on the dark side of the chair, you want to have some
Okay.
lighting on your face, just so we can
Yes.
see you. Yeah.
And how about microphones? I mean, you said the note you don't need a professional setup, but I personally would recommend if you can get some sort of microphone, maybe in the headset. That would be nice. If you don't have it, it's not mandatory, but at least try to be, for example, close to the computer so that you can, or raise your voice so that it can be really well heard. I've have many times that I have to say, could you repeat this, please? Could you, what did you say? And it's just a little bit of a waste of the time. But that said, is I would always recommend don't be afraid of asking someone to repeat the question. Like,
Yep.
hey, could you please repeat it again? I'm sorry, I didn't hear. It's fine. Don't feel ashamed because I'd rather repeat the question and get the answer that I was looking for than just hear a thingy. Blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah.
yeah, totally. And on that direction, if you can, just, I mean, it sounds trivial, but just connect your computer to cable rather than Wi-Fi. I mean,
Mm.
sure, you have a
Mm.
perfect internet at home or not, just using cable reduces the latency, and it really makes a difference on calls, and you don't have to chopped voice or anything. It's important. If you can, do it. If not, but right.
Okay, now one thing that it's also important is the what we're looking for, and this is something that it's related to the talent acquisition. That
Hmm.
sometimes we get candidates that are not ideal, but I
Uh-huh.
think that something that we need to mention that, but I don't think we have that much time. Maybe for another podcast is the that it's important that you coordinate with talent acquisition of your in your company. But well, I think that we're almost reaching the 30-minute mark, so I think it's a good moment to close down the topic. Now, any last recommendation, anything that you'd like to mention, questions that you'd
Um,
like to ask?
No, just be yourself. Don't be nervous. I think we've all been there, and good interviewers know that they've also been there. We've all been there in the other side of the table. So don't be afraid. I think what we try to do at Cognizant Centric is have just a coffee break, a chat. You join us at the office. We have a coffee, and we talk about technical topics, and it's like any other conversation. And I think that's when best, like the best candidates come here, and it's like just a coffee break, and yeah.
Well, I would recommend, for example, honesty and just be yourself.
Mhm.
That's for me the best thing. I like to know that the person that I'm talking to is honest, and that's the person that I'm going to be working with. So that would be my recommendation. So I think that that's all the time that we have. If you want to share with us nice or horror stories regarding interviews, please do so in the comment section. It would be interesting to hear that out. And thank you very much for joining us in today's episode. Ricard, thank you very much.
Thank you. See you next time.
And see you next time. Bye bye.